All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to today's explainer. We're heading high up into the rugged mountains of ancient Caria to explore something truly spectacular, the brilliantly preserved sanctuary of Labraunda. If you're a fan of hidden mountain temples and ancient cultures that perfectly smash together the traditions of the East and the West, well, you're absolutely going to love this. We've taken all the heavy-duty research on this site and packed it down into exactly what you need to know today. So, get your hiking boots ready, because we are going up.
Now, to really get a feel for this place, you kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of an ancient pilgrim. Picture this. You're starting your journey way down in the ancient city of Mylasa. That's in modern-day Muğla, Turkey. From there, you start walking uphill, and I mean really walking. It's a steady 14-kilometer climb, which is about 8.5 miles, all along this wide, stone-paved road. And what's waiting at the end? An absolutely awe-inspiring terrace complex dedicated to a sky god. I mean, it was not an easy trek, for sure. But honestly, that was the whole point. The literal sweat and dedication required to get there just made the arrival feel that much more intensely spiritual.
Moving into Section 1, Caria's Mountain Sanctuary, home of the storm god.
So, when we say storm god, forget what you know about the traditional Greek Zeus. You know, the guy hurling lightning bolts. The deity worshipped up here is Zeus Labradones, the Carian storm and sky god, and instead of a thunderbolt, this guy means business in a totally different way. He holds a spear in one hand, and in the other, the Labris. That's a massive double-headed axe. In fact, the very name of the city, Labraunda, is literally tied to this iconic defining symbol.
Right at the pulsing heart of this massive sanctuary is the Temple of Zeus. The version we see the ruins of today was actually finished back in the 4th century BC by a guy named Idrius. He was a Carian satrap, which is basically a super powerful regional governor working under the Persian Empire. He built this stunning temple in an elegant Ionic order. It was later expanded into a fully peripatral plan, meaning it had columns wrapping all the way around the outside. This was it. This was the ultimate finish line for those exhausted travelers who just hiked up that huge mountain.
All right, Section 2, the Sacred Way and Architecture, climbing the mountain.
Let's actually trace that exact path those ceremonial processions took. Like we talked about, first you start down in Mylasa city. Then you grind through that 14-kilometer paved sacred way. Once you finally reach the top, you don't just walk into a building. You pass through monumental propylons. These are these incredibly grand entrance gates that basically shout at you, hey, you're leaving the mortal world now and stepping into the divine. Finally, you emerge onto these sprawling artificial terraces. See, because Labraunda is built on this really rugged, crazy terrain, ancient engineers literally had to carve into the mountain to build these massive flat platforms just to hold the buildings. It's an absolute marvel of ancient engineering.
And those buildings? They perfectly showcase what a wild cultural melting pot Caria actually was. Look at the grand banqueting halls on the site, known as Andron A and Andron B. These are built by the famous satrap Mausoleus and his brother Idrius as these lavish VIP reception halls. But what's so cool is how they smash different styles together. You've got your traditional Greek stuff, like Doric and Ionic columns, right? But they're completely integrated into Eastern, Carian satrapal designs. It's a literal architectural bridge between the Greek world to the west and the massive Persian Empire out east.
Next up, Section 3, Mysterious Structures and Prophecy, Ancient Secrets.
As we move deeper into the complex, things get a little weird in the best way possible. We find structures for daily life, defense, and the supernatural. Get this, there was a sacred pool filled with fish that they actually used for prophecy. Yeah, you heard me right, psychic fish. Ancient priests would watch how the fish in this pool behaved to divine the future and deliver prophecies. Just imagine traveling weeks across the Mediterranean, hiking up a literal mountain, all to see if a fish ate some food so you could figure out your destiny. It just goes to show how totally baked-in mysticism was to the daily operations of this sanctuary.
Okay, but it wasn't all just psychic fish and temples. If we keep heading up the terraces, we see a whole functioning city built to handle massive, sprawling festivals. Up north, there's a stadium for athletic games honoring Zeus. You've got royal palaces and priest houses where the VIPs and clergy lived. There are stoas, these gorgeous, shaded, columned galleries for hanging out of the sun and storing religious goods. Looming over everything is a rocky acropolis, acting as a heavy-duty defensive watchtower. Oh, and don't forget the monumental tombs built with perfect ashlar masonry for Carian nobles. The big takeaway here? Labraunda wasn't just a lonely temple, it was a sprawling, heavily fortified complex.
Which brings us to Section 4, Excavation History and Archaeologists Unearthing the Past.
So, how in the world do we actually know all this stuff about a forgotten city way up in the mountains? Well, it's basically a decades-long triumph of international teamwork, mostly driven by Swedish and later on French teams. It all kicks off in 1948 with Axel W. Persson. He started the systematic digging and laid out the foundational map of the site. After 1951, Paul Ostrom and Gustav Soflin kept the ball rolling. Then we hit the later 20th century, and a total giant in the field, Pontus Hellström, takes over as long-term director. He really nailed down our understanding of the architecture. Late 20th and early 21st century, Lars Carlson steps in, shifting focus to how the site was defended and its later Byzantine era. And since the late 2000s, Olivier Henry has been leading joint French-Swedish teams, digging up more of the sacred way and tweaking the timeline. It is literally generations of dedicated scientists moving dirt to find the truth.
Moving to Section 5, Excavated Artifacts and Finds, Treasures of Keia.
Let's actually look at the physical stuff these teams pulled straight out of the dirt. The sheer variety is wild. On the religious side, we're talking terracotta figurines spanning from the Archaic all the way to the Roman periods, ritual oil lamps, and, obviously, statues of our axe-wielding Zeus. Politically, they found hundreds of inscriptions detailing the Hecatomza dynasty, rulers like Mausolus and Ada. These stones literally prove how politically massive this site was. They also found a ton of Mylasa and Hellenistic coins. And for daily and military life, we're talking arrowheads, spear tips, bone tools, and jewelry pulled from the Acropolis and garrison areas. It paints a super vivid picture of a place that was heavily guarded and intensely lived in.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, where is all this stuff right now? Most of the portable artifacts, the really incredible pieces, have been carefully moved for preservation. You can actually go see them today proudly displayed at the Bodrum Underwater Archaeology Museum and the Milas Museum. So hey, if you ever find yourself wandering around the southwestern coast of Turkey, you know exactly where to go to see these Carian treasures up close.
And that brings us to our final slide. It really leaves us with one massive question. What other ancient secrets might still be buried out there in the mountains of Anatolia? Labraunda stands today as one of the best preserved mountain sanctuaries on Earth. Its huge terraces are still clinging to those cliffs just like they did thousands of years ago. It's a fantastic reminder that history isn't always just sitting out in the open. Sometimes it is waiting patiently at the end of a very long, steep climb. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found this virtual hike as fascinating as I did. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will catch you in the next one.